Hello everyone and happy Figure Friday. Today we'll be looking at the beautiful Four Murasame from Mobile Suit Gundam Zeta as presented by Bandai Spirits. It's worth noting going into this review that this is a prize figure. It comes at a pretty cheap price, so I'm not expecting too much out of this figure. And with that being said, let's just dive right in. Right out of the gate we can see that we get 4 different pieces when we unbox this figure. We get the top half of 4, we get the bottom half of 4, a base, and a stand for the leg. And then going into the build process, it's pretty straightforward. You just snap on the top and bottom half, go ahead and set her right on the base. It's a little wobbly, so be careful. And then put the leg stand on right where her knee is, and you're good to go. And there she is in all of her glory. Definitely do not forget to put that knee stand on, as it is very essential. There is some heavy lean without it, and I definitely think it would break over time. The rest of the figure seems pretty well put together. Actually, the sculpt is really well done, and the pose is definitely one from the books. Any fan of Zeta can instantly recognize where this pose is from, and it definitely shows as being one of the more iconic ones, so I'm glad to see it in a figure form. What I don't like, however, is the paint job. Unfortunately, I don't think they did a good job with this. The colors are really basic, the shading just isn't there, and the color of her skin is ultra pale. She straight up looks like a ghost in certain lighting, and it just doesn't look good. And it's really a shame because there are a lot of really good fold lines in the sculpt, and it had a lot of potential to be a good figure, but because of the poor quality of coloring, I'm finding it really hard to enjoy anything about this figure. Just getting a closer look at her face, you can see the lipstick looks a little bit awkward, and her face just doesn't look right. It doesn't look human, which I guess is fitting in some ways, but it just doesn't look right. It doesn't look natural. And her hair color is just a little bit too blue compared to the artwork of the original series. Why is Bandai so obsessed with these crappy white bases? I don't get it. With my review of the Soletta Mercury figure that was released a few months back, we didn't have this issue. They gave us a nice clear blue base, and it looked great. But for these cheap prize figures, I honestly understand them not going the route of a nice base, but just having these plain white bases that look so ugly on your shelf compared to all of your Gunpla or other figures, it just isn't the way to go, and it really deters me from buying anymore. I guess all of these issues are kind of to be expected from a figure of this price point, but just looking at the quality of some of the other figures that Bandai puts out, I feel like Gundam really gets the short end of the stick when comparing to other prize figures. There's just too much competition in the market for a cheap figure like this to be cheap quality. But given the stranglehold that Bandai has on the Gundam market, I can see greed as a big reason as to why these characters aren't getting better figures in the lower price points. It's not the worst thing in the world to get such a low quality figure if the size is right. And honestly, in this regard, I do think the size is pretty good for what you get. 4 measures in at a respectable 8.5 inches tall, including the base, and about 4 inches in width at the base, with her playful and romantic wingspan at about 6 inches as well. I believe in comparison this puts 4 right about 1/9 scale, although technically not scaled, so pretty standard stuff when coming to prize figure size. Once again, just looking at the box that the figure came in, I want to just compare how different the two figures look, especially when looking at the angle that's presented on the base. It almost looks like the artwork on the box is angled backward to give a better angle and create the illusion that the figure looks better than it actually does, because when I look at her face specifically, it looks a little bit more chubby than it does compared to the picture. So I just thought it looked really odd and, a little bit false in the way that it's advertised. It's no secret that this figure is a bit of a flop, at least in my opinion. It's just a shame that such an amazing and badass character like Ford doesn't have enough representation in the figure market, and this is one of her only appearances within it. Of course, there's always the option of the slightly more expensive scale figure, but of course, that does cost more money. And outside of that, there's not really much else. So, us as Gundam fans kind of needed this one to be a win, but unfortunately, it just isn't. While my expectations were pretty low, I have to admit I was pretty disappointed with the outcome of this figure, especially given that 4 is probably one of my favorite characters in the Gundam franchise. So, with that being said, oh well, what can you do? If you made it this far in the video, just go ahead, leave a comment, and let me know if Zeta Gundam is the best Gundam in the franchise, which it is, so go ahead and let me know that. I'm sure all of you Iron-Blooded Orphan fans are going to be very upset at me saying that, but it's the truth. Argue with me in the comments. Go for it. I'll hear you out. And don't forget to hit that like button. Please subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care, and bye-bye.